I'm pressing the wrong button. It's obviously going to be one of those mornings. Morning! Welcome to Corporate Parenting Panel. My name is Councillor Stephen Rowe, and I'm chairman for this panel. Councillor Cleo Periton-Williams, vice chairman of the panel, is also in attendance. Before we move on further with the main business of this meeting, can I remind you that the audio-visual feed is working if you press the right button. Of this formal meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website. I would like to begin with a health and safety announcement. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park. We then need to wait in the car park until further instructions. Could I also remind you to switch off the noise to your mobiles and your laptops and iPads for the duration of the meeting. If you wish to ask a question or make a statement in the course of the meeting, can you please raise your hand? Can I also remind members of the panel to switch on their microphones when invited to speak? There's obviously rubbing it in this morning. To speak close to the microphone and to switch their microphone off after you make your contributions. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman. Please can you keep your questions and contributions succinct and concise. Okay, so we'll move on to the full agenda now. First item is apologies for absence. Emily, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Matthews, Councillor Cook and Polly Coombs.
Thank you very much. Do any members wish to declare any interest that they have not been declared previously on the pecuniary interests? No, that's great. Obviously, if something pops up on the way through, then you can announce it. Item 3, minutes of the meeting with the panel of the 19th of January 2023. This item is to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting, which can be found on pages 3 to 8 of the agenda pack as a correct record. Can I ask for a proposal, please? You weren't here? Okay, yes, yep. Thank you. And then in that case, I'm happy to second it. We'll now vote. All those in favour? Okay. And against and abstentions. Thank you. Those minutes are agreed. Hiya. Do you want to just take your seats? Okay, that's great. We have a long agenda this morning. Therefore, I'd like to ask officers to summarise the key points of their reports to allow for more time for question and debating. I have no announcements from Councillor Mrs Patricia Bradwell. Lead officers, I know Joe's here today instead of Tara, and I'm guessing she's got nothing. Unfortunately, Tara can't be with us this morning. Item 5, Children in Care Engagement in Education, Impact of Department for Education, DFE Post-16 Pilot. This item is on pages 9 to 192 of the agenda pack and provides an overview of the impact of the Department of Education, DFE Post-16 Pupil Premium Pilot that ran from October 2021 to March 2022. The aim of the pilot was to test the extension of financial support to children in care and care leavers in general further education. And this report's going to be presented by, we'll call him Andy Morris, Corporate Parenting Manager, that he doesn't think he's in trouble. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you. Good morning. Yeah, just say, I'm sure you've probably read the papers, but Appendix A is really the one you've got to focus on because the government review is quite in-depth and quite scientific. But I think what we're going to focus on this morning is really the impact it's had locally. So as you say, the post-16 pupil premium pilot was introduced in July 2021, and this was looking at increasing participation of those already in education, training, employment, raising the profile of looked after children and care leavers in education and training, and improving the outcomes of those young people. And it's just to be really specific that this is young people in education and training. Employment isn't measured as part of this outcome. So if young people are in employment between the ages of 16 and 18, they weren't measured, which is something we've discussed here before. So really saying September 2021, at the start of the post-16 pupil premium pilot, there were 159 young people in care of Lincolnshire, and in the post-16 cohort, 60% were male and 40% were female. And it's interesting to note that 17.6% of those young people were unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people. And the first table in Appendix A really shows you where those young people were within particular settings, be it mainstream, secondary school, college, special schools, independent schools, etc. So we used the PEP process to allocate funds, and that was building on the foundations of the current effectiveness of the PEP process. And we sought to address issues such as barriers to young people engaged in education post-16, things such as transport, access to IT, additional support, and encouraging and incentivising young people to remain in education and training beyond the age of 16. Some of the areas of focus we identified were enhanced pastoral support to young people or to our children in care, enhanced designated teacher support to promote effective personal education plans, supporting staff in education settings with trauma-informed training for all college staff, and extracurricular activities such as ESOL stands for English for Speakers of Other Languages, and for those particularly for our unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people, some of whom come into the country at different points through the year and don't necessarily fall directly into the college intake cycle. So we were looking at engaging those young people in education, training, employment in terms of upskilling them in their English-speaking skills. And of course, this was woven into our Caring to Learn offer. Lincolnshire Virtual School was allocated a total of £124,200, and you'll see in the table on page 7 how that funding was allocated. And I've already been through some of those processes and focus areas such as enhanced pastoral support and helping young people access education by actually physically funding their transport to education. And we used the money in many, many different ways. For example, we did additional tuition to help young people prepare for their GCSEs, a contribution toward driving lessons for a young person on an apprenticeship, functional skills, online learning courses, suitable clothing to enable young people to participate in work experience or remain in their apprenticeship, laptops to support completion of college work, bicycles, bus passes, some of those kind of real physical barriers that young people face, breaking those barriers down to help promote and sustain them in education and training beyond the age of 16. So really just whizzing towards the end of the report, around page 9, I just wanted to highlight what some of our PEP data identified. As a result of this, a local impact was the number of Year 12 students on roll at further education colleges remained stable throughout the academic year. We didn't see a drop-off as sometimes see, but it remained stable, which was positive. 2 students who left the post-16 setting moved on to a college course. 2 students who left college continued to access education at an alternative post-16 setting. And the number of students securing places at college in the next academic year rose to 50. Of these, 22 students progressed on their year-on-year college, and 6 students started college having previously attended an alternative post-16 provision. So you can see these are just some examples of local impact. So really it's just kind of the phase 1 evaluation. Some of the things I wanted to pick up that the DFE said to help you kind of distill that enormous report that they wrote. On page 14, it says that the DFE should commission a longer-term evaluation of this. And it also, which was interesting that we've discussed here at Corporate Parenting, that one of the findings of the report was that central government there should be clarity on the data needs and reporting of young people in NEET or in education, training, employment. We've discussed that here about how there's kind of an imbalance or what the central government are asking us to report isn't really practical sometimes. We've also looked at extending the post-16 pupil premium to all local authorities, because this was a pilot in Lincolnshire, and we look at extending the funding calculations beyond those in further education colleges and extending this funding not just 16 to 18 but beyond the age of 18 to help care leavers sustain further education as they access the leaving care service and move into adulthood. And we also wanted to produce some statutory guidance for colleges on meeting the needs of looked after children and care leavers as well, and also extending and making the further education lead as we have the designated teacher role in schools, one of the recommendations was to have a further education lead role within schools. So really, that's a quick summary of the report. I'm not going to pretend to be the expert on this topic. It is actually Sarah Lane, so I will try and answer some questions. Please be kind. But if there's anything that we can't answer today, then we'll make some notes of that and we'll come back to Sarah because she can't be here today, and we'll make sure that the questions are answered for members. Thank you.
Okay. The good news is the actions of the panel is invited to consider and comment on the contents of the report found in Appendix A and to endorse the report, which is real good news if you try to read Appendix B. Sorry, we can't...
Thank you, Chairman. Andy, I don't know whether you've got any numbers of minors coming in that can't, where English isn't their first language, and do we as a council offer them English courses so that they can then proceed on to further education? Thank you.
Are you making specific reference to unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people? Yeah. And so it was, the first question was numbers. At the moment, we've got 69. I think it was exactly the number this morning. Young people in our care, and we've got about a third of our care leavers are former unaccompanied asylum seekers, and each of those young people are offered access to the ESOL course, which is English for speakers of other languages. Although English isn't often their first language, a lot of young people who arrive and are taken into a car do actually have a reasonably good grasp of English, and that improves as they go through their educational progress. Yeah, we do.
Do we have any further questions? No, just a couple of things from me. I did read some of Appendix B, and what stuck in my head was there was a report on what one of the other local authorities had done. I felt what we did was quite imaginative. I think it was a good use of money in lots of different ways. The one that stuck in my mind was where they're actually bribing the children, the young people, to stay in education by paying them to go. I'm not quite sure as that's the best one, but it might well have worked. On the Appendix A, it's not a question, Andy, it's just a page 17 of the pack and page 7 of the report. There's a box that says post-16 pupil premium pilot allocation of funding, and it says went directly to FE colleagues and post-16 settings with high numbers of children in care on roll 2, and there's obviously something missing, I would have thought. But other than that, sorry, Councillor Whittington.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just Andy, I did actually see their office in Grantham yesterday because I was out with out with a resident, and we saw the YPLP building they've got in Grantham, and it says in the sort of bullet point the young people can enrol at any time. Could you just sort of explain how that works? Because no, right, okay, fair enough.
I can try. So I think really in terms of how it works, Sarah Lane, who's the head of the virtual school, is I think we'd all agree very tenacious, and the circumstances of our children in care and care leavers change quite on a quite regular basis, and so there's constant review of individual circumstances. So whilst there are obvious points in the academic year when you'd want young people to start in provision, that doesn't mean that young people's circumstances don't change and they can access provision at other times. So I think that's really kind of how it works really in relation to our own provision, YPLP, is there is that ability to access places if the needs and circumstances change.
So are they a third party organisation, or are they part of the county council?
Part of the council.
Part of the council.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Joe.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you very much.
Okay, so yes. Oh, Councillor Matthews.
It's a brilliant report, isn't it? Pages of it. What are the implications for us? What are we on trend with? What are we behind the curve with what do we need to change as a result of this? Is it pointing in a direction, or is it just...
I think, so I understand there's a fuller report coming to this committee in May, I think, which will look at the analysis, because the data has only just been published in order for us to look at those sort of comparisons with other areas. But I think it's a real positive, because obviously it's the first time that we've had specific money made available to us for this particular cohort. And as Andy said, it's enabled us to do some different things, but, you know, really focus on this particular cohort and the needs. I think our offer for our asylum-seeking young people is really strong. You know, there are very strong links with the local college in Peterborough, where the majority of that cohort are accommodated. And as Andy has said, we've got the ESOL provision to start through a tutor almost immediately, so there's no gap if those young people are waiting for a place. In relation to the broader cohort, I think what it means is that whilst the team work really hard with providers, colleges and YPLP and others, it does offer the ability to do some really bespoke things to meet the needs of individuals, because their circumstances are all very different. And I talked at scrutiny last week around the fluctuations of the numbers. So we have, I know the virtual school review the numbers on a, well, as things arise and as and, you know, Andy and others raise specific issues about particular individuals, they will respond to those. But they review the whole cohort every 12 weeks. And the numbers, so, you know, we get 7 or 8 young people into provision, and then, you know, a few weeks later, it's another set of young people that they're focusing, because the circumstances have either changed or they've just come into care at that point and have perhaps been out of education. So I think that individual focus and that individual amounts of money to particularly focus on individual children is something that's really positive, particularly in Lincolnshire, when you are looking at a real range of different you know, providers and provisions and settings across the county that's so large. So I think that's kind of one of the main things.
Can you just clarify something you said there? You're talking about high churn in those figures, but are you talking about a complete changeover in the 12-week period?
No, not talking about a complete changeover. So small numbers will fluctuate, but that does have an impact on what the performance figures look like. And it's that need to be able to drill down into that context to understand it, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. So, I move that the panel receives and endorses the report that we commend on the work undertaken as part of the pilot, and to express our satisfaction in the extension of the post-16 pupil premium pilot being extended to cover the current academic year. I also request that our comments as captured are taken under consideration by officers and relevant portfolio holders in support of your works towards further enhancing access to education, employment and training opportunities for our young people in care and care leavers. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Thank you. That is agreed. Item 6, Voices for Choices V4C update report. This item on pages 193 to 198 of the pack provides the panel with a summary and an overview of recent activities regarding Voices for Choices and the big conversation and actions to support future planning and progress. The panel is invited to provide comment and steer regarding V4C activities and meetings undertaken within the reporting period and future planning the delivery of V4C meetings and activities. This report will be presented by Ben Lilly, Practice Supervisor, Quality and Standards. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Okay, yes, so this report does 2 things really. It gives a summary of our Children Care Council V4C activities from the end of October through to January, and it also outlines some planning that we're undertaking to develop and look at how we can deliver V4C in an alternative way to increase the attendance and engagement of children and young people. So the big conversation, the latest big conversation was held at the end of October, and we had 20 young people attend. That was at the showroom in the daytime in Lincoln. A productive and successful meeting and there's feedback in the report about the details of what was discussed in that meeting. And within that meeting, we did also have a session where we were looking to get feedback from children and people to get their views on when the meetings could take place in the future and different ways we could do it. So we had 20 young people attending the big conversation in October. The delivery of V4C meetings throughout October and January. The report summarises the different locations, the four quadrant locations across Lincolnshire. Within East Lindsey, it remains a challenge to establish a group. We're really getting 2 to 3 at most in that area currently. However, with the introduction and establishment of a new children's residential home, we are going to have a V4C meeting within that V4C group within that home. So we're hoping that develops over the coming months. Lincoln and West Lindsey, the numbers are growing again, which is pleasing. We had 9 attendees in January. That has now gone up to 13 at the end of February, just outside of this reporting period. So becoming quite a healthy group there, and a number of those are definitely will be coming to our next big conversation in April as well, to see that meeting for the first time. Boston and South Holland, again, we have a consistent small group of 4 young people who are attending, and there's feedback in the report about what that group is doing. The second part of the report really talks about a formal review that we're undertaking with regard to how we operate and develop V4C. So we are making ongoing attempts to raise awareness of V4C, to encourage children and young people to attend. However, the situation remains that attendances in some of the localities are not growing. Lincoln and West Lindsey currently is the only one that is actually growing over recent months. So what we're looking at, we've established a Children's Services Development Group, and that includes representatives from teams across the Directorate. And we held the first meeting at the beginning of February where we are considering how we can deliver the model differently. So this is also based on the feedback that we're getting from children and young people, is that they prefer meetings to be held in the daytime, such as in school holidays and half term. And some of the feedback we're getting is that when the meetings are held in the evening, they're not getting home till quite late. So by the time they finish the meeting and we provide transport, a taxi to get home, they're sometimes not getting home till 9, 9:30. And we're getting feedback that discourages attendance. Daytime meetings give us more time for travel, more time to do the work, and more time to provide a fun activity. So we're looking at how we do that, and we're considering also the current model of 44 V4C meetings. So there's a monthly meeting across 4 quadrants, means there's 44 individual meetings taking place, and there's a feeling that if we centralise some of the groups a bit more, operate them in the daytime, it might be a way to encourage greater attendance and engagement from some of our children in care. The other thing we're looking at doing is working with the virtual school and some designated teachers to establish direct links with children in care within schools, and how we may use a pilot school to try and set up a V4C children in care group within a school. And we're looking at that in the East Lindsey area, a secondary school in Spilsby currently. So that's just starting. So just to conclude, we are making ongoing attempts to publicise the Children in Care Council V4C groups, and we are also looking now about considering a different way of how we deliver it in terms of the times and activities of the groups, and we're hoping to plan that to maybe put in place a new model in September or January at the latest. Okay, hope that's okay.
Thank you, Ben. Do we have any questions or comments? Councillor Whittington.
Hi Ben, thanks for the report. Couple of questions. First one really simple. The Fab Awards in June, have you got a date, time and venue as yet? And again, could an invite go out to members of the panel?
Yes.
To see if we can do it?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. So it is the 17th of June, Saturday the 17th of June, and it's at Lincoln University at the Isaac Newton building. Invites have gone out to Councillor Rowe and a few others, but I can certainly ensure all the councillors in attendance get that that meeting appointment as well.
Thank you. Second question, Ben. I see that at the moment, because of a staff vacancy, all the children in SK and NK are going up to Lincoln. Obviously, I'm from Grantham in SK. Is there a plan to fill the vacancy, and how's it going?
My understanding is the vacancy's been filled at the beginning of March. They've started.
Brilliant.
So yeah, that will be taken forward. The groups are delivered by the groups are delivered by Future for Me, Senior Youth and Community Development Workers. So it's another team that's had the vacancy, but yeah, they're in place now, so that will be moving forward.
Okay, it's fine. And finally, just a general comment. I mean, I think I can understand the young people when they say that going to meetings in the evenings after school is a trial, because I know some of us councillors often have meetings in the day and then go to parish councils and other meetings at night, and it makes it a long day. So I actually think the move towards having a model where it's focused around holidays and half terms to allow a whole day is probably the right way forward. So thanks, thank you.
Yeah, and just one comment on that. If you go back to the top of the report, the meeting which has the largest number of attendees consistently is our big conversation meetings, which of course are held in holiday times in the daytime, and we're getting 20 to 25 for that. That's our thinking, really.
Do we have any further questions? No? Okay, that's great. From my point of view, big conversation work extremely well. I've not attended one of the others, but I've attended all the big conversations since I've sat on this panel. And some of the stuff comes out of it is very good. It's painful at times, but in a good way.
Yes,
and Ben and I have spoke about the V4C meetings, and when you get two people there, that doesn't mean the meeting is no good, but it's an awful lot of effort to get two people there. So I fully support looking at it, and thank you very much for the report, Ben.
Thank you very much.
I move that we receive the report and record our thanks for the overall efforts of officers to engage with our young people and to improve the attendance of V4C meetings and events. And I ask that our views and feedback in relation to interventions required to stimulate activity and improve engagement and participation are captured, are shared with officers and relevant portfolio holders in support of your efforts. Can I ask you to raise your hand if you're in agreement, please? Thank you. Thank you, Ben. More than happy for you to go. So we now move on to 7, Children in Care Performance Measures, Quarter 3. This item on page 199 to 226 of the pack and invites the panel to consider and comment on the key performance information for Quarter 3 of 2022-23, which is relevant to the work of the panel. The report will be presented by Joe Kavanagh. The panel is invited to consider, review and comment on the detail provided in the report and recommend any actions or changes to the Executive Councillor for Children's Services, Community Safety, Procurement and now Migration. Joe.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I do have a number of other experts in the room that will be able to assist me with any questions that you might have. But I'm really pleased to say that out of the 16 measures that relate to children in care, we only have we have 6 that aren't meeting their target and 2 that are ahead of the target. The rest are all on target, which is, given some of the challenges, a really positive picture, I think. Hopefully people find the comparative data for the measures really helpful in terms of where we are doing in comparison with others. So I will just briefly go through those that are outside of the range in terms of their target. So those that didn't meet the target, so the average time taken between a child entering care and moving to adoptive family, members of the panel will be aware that this is a rolling 3-year target, and which means that it has taken some time and will take some time to get back within measures. Some of the main impact has been around court times, so delays in court time mean that there have been delays in relation to children entering care and moving to adoptive family. And you can also see in the narrative that there are a number of unusual anomalies within that data which has impacted on it, and I think that's really in a sense a positive thing, because it's about the tenacity and commitment of the team to getting adoptive placements for children that perhaps in other parts of the country may have moved into long-term foster care. So that has impacted on the time taken, but for very positive reasons. In terms of the percentage of children in care with an up-to-date health check, I think you heard at the last meeting the positive work that's been undertaken between our colleagues, Laura Bonner, who's in the room, and our health colleagues in improving this performance. But we do still have a number of young people that don't want to engage in this process and vote with their feet, if you like, in relation to that. But positive messages are continued to be given to encourage them to engage in their health assessments. In relation to an up-to-date dental check, as you can see, the measure has improved, and we're now sitting at just over 72%, which still means we've got some way to go in terms of our target of 95%, but the impact of the pandemic and the impact on access to dentists has continued to be an issue. We've worked really hard with our health colleagues, and you'll be aware that there has been a lot of work undertaken to attract dentists into Lincolnshire, and we have, I understand, 35 new dentists that are due to start over the coming months, and this group of young children will be prioritised through that work and continue to liaise with public health colleagues around that. Similarly, in relation to routine immunisations, the COVID pandemic still continues to have an impact, but we are seeing that slow improvements in this performance. In relation to children in care who are participating in learning, you've heard from Andy this morning about the work that we are doing in this area, and although the target remains fluctuating, we are doing lots of things to try and really focus on getting young people into learning. And similarly, in relation to care leavers in education, employment and training, I don't know if Andy, if you wanted to say anything specific around either of those two measures.
No, I'll just see if any of the members have got any questions in particular. I've got a few pieces I can feed back if needs be.
Okay, thank you. And then the measures that are ahead of target, pleased to say, in terms of matching, our performance remains really strong. And this is really around the continued efforts to find families at the earliest opportunity, and so that wherever an order is made from the court, that identification is really timely. And the stability of placements for children in care, and again, I think this is an area where we are continuing to perform really well, and really well in comparison with others. And that is quite significant in terms of some of the challenges that we faced, really, in particular with this cohort of young people. So that's kind of my summary, unless anybody's got any particular questions or comments.
Thank you, Jo. Do we have any questions? Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thanks, Jo. Thanks for the report. I know the Children's Committee last week we explored the question of the backlog in the courts, which the answer obviously seems to be improving, obviously post COVID. In terms of the children in dental care, I mean, obviously this is a big problem with dentists who were previously NHS going private. And I know my dentist in Grantham has recently made that decision. And I don't think there's now an NHS dentist in Grantham. And I'm just wondering, obviously that's a big issue. That's a big issue and a big concern. I mean, would we, if a child in care, if the only option was private treatment, would we offer any financial support to any foster parents? Thanks.
Yes, we would do. I can see a number of people nodding in agreement. We would look at individual circumstances on an individual basis, but we will ensure that any immediate treatment was made available, we wouldn't have children, suffering or experiencing pain and things because they couldn't access services. We're working really closely with Lucy Gabbins, and other people in the room will be working on this too, in terms of making sure that the dentists that come into Lincolnshire through the kind of golden handshake scheme that's mentioned in the report are available to this particular cohort of young people as a priority, and that will be part of the requirements of the services that they need to deliver over a period of time in order to get the benefit of the scheme.
Thanks, Joe. I mean, hopefully, I don't know if they do it, but hopefully at some point the new medical school, do they do courses in dentistry at the moment or not? But hopefully, if they did at some point.
I'm not sure, but I'm sure that our public health colleagues will be looking at how we are continuing to be able to have that supply of dentists into Lincolnshire.
Because I know
it's a real
that sort of
challenge.
now, I know there was an issue attracting nursing staff, but obviously having the nursing schools helped at the university, and they're hoping that, well, by the medical school, it'll increase the number of doctors staying. So maybe this is something we could possibly explore, because obviously if students do their qualifications and courses in Lincolnshire, they may decide to stay. Thanks.
I've got a question about dentists as well. I just wondered if it was something that we could send them out of county for. So obviously, like in Grantham, I agree with you about the NHS thing because I can't seem to find one at all. But I wondered, obviously, like Grantham, we're quite close to Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire. Is there something where we could just push them across the border, at least so that they get their checks still?
I think one of the issues will be there are challenges probably in every county for this particular cohort of children. However, we would look, on an individual basis with the individual social workers, etc., to ensure that we don't have a situation where young people are being impacted in this way. But yeah, I think that the hopeful news is that this committee will hopefully be hearing shortly that the impact of the new dentist is having some direct impact on this particular performance target. It's something that there's an awful lot of work going on behind the scenes around to ensure that is in place, because it is a really crucial basic health needs for this particular young people.
Councillor Matthews.
Good report. I want to ask about care leavers in education, employment or training. Earlier on, PEP, 99%, brilliant. Suitable accommodation, 94%. And then suddenly we dropped to 47.3% of this reported cohort not in engagement. And we say that it's because they've got mental health and they're drug abusers. How many of these are located in the county and how many are located out of the county? And what on earth can we do to get this up to those 99s and 94%? Because we've had them for quite a long time. And I can't believe they just drop off a cliff when they become 17.
So just in relation to the performance windows, just to say that at 47.3%, this is a snapshot of performance in a particular period of time. And I think at the bottom I've tried to explain that in the very final paragraph, that actually the live rolling figure of young people who are leaving care and education, employment, training is actually running at about 51%. Okay, it's only 4 or 5%, but that's 4 or 5%. And as we've said before, when we're working with these young people, we're working in the margins. I think if we go back to the report that looks at the post-16 pupil premium, you'll see that the majority of the money was actually spent on pastoral care, support, improving motivation, improving resilience, improving mental health. And through this group, working with this group, actually our area of investment has been in emotional well-being for our young people. I think, again, we come back to the narrative in this committee that some of these young people have experienced some of the most traumatic things they can in life. And around half of those young people come into care a little bit later. They're coming into care about 13, 14, 15, having been in their home when they come to the attention of children's services. And I say there was 159 young people out of our 700 in care were actually 16 and 17 years old. So there's a large number there. And there's like a bulge in the end of the system, a particular number of young people. And I think it's just taken into the context of their lived experience that when you have been abused by the person who's supposed to love you most, that's some of the most challenging thing that these young people deal with. So They are in education, employment and training. Again, like Joe said, we see a fluctuation. We see some young people make it into education, employment training. We see young people drop out. And I do track on a quarterly basis, and myself and Deborah will be doing that this afternoon in the commissioning meeting we'll have with Bernardo's, where we actually monitor all young people that come in and all young people that go out. And I have a narrative about these young people. And I think it would probably be helpful if outside of this meeting we actually sat down and had a look at some of the lived experience and stories of some of the young people not in education, employment and training, and put it into the context of how actually surviving, being educated, being kept warm, comfortable, fed, accommodated, and some of the basic needs of the young people are being met exceptionally well. And we're working and supporting these young people to reach their educational attainment. Also, the reason why the extension of the Leaving Care Service went from the age of 21 up to the age of 25 back in 2017 was in recognition of the impact of trauma and abuse and the experience these young people have, that actually they come into education, employment and training later on in life, maybe 23, 24, 25. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm supporting young people to go into education at the age of 22 when they're no longer measured within this cohort. So actually, again, the extension of pupil premium for 16 to 18-year-olds, the way that this is measured was identified as one of the things that needs to be revised by central government, which will help affect and help us capture better some of the successes of young people later on in life, because we're not asked to capture that, and that's why it's not within the performance measure.
Thanks, Andy. The target is 60%. Is that completely bonkers then? Because 47.3, 60% means we're virtually 25% adrift of our target. And secondly, I did ask how many are in county at the moment and out of county. So obviously when they're care leavers, they're not located within Lincolnshire, and I understand a number of these may be out of the county.
Yeah, the vast majority of young people are placed within county and live within the borders of Lincolnshire. I do have the numbers of young people that I can send actually as an update about where young people live within district council area and where young people live out of county. And actually some of the young people living out of county, the 150 odd, which is about a third of our care leavers that live out of county in Peterborough, unaccompanied asylum seekers, the majority of those young people are actually in education, employment and training. And some of the work that's been done nationally around that is to identify that although unaccompanied asylum seekers have experienced trauma, moving through war zones, etc., to make it to the country, it's actually they've been sent here with love by their parents. Their parents have, it's been about the move behind those young people is actually a compassionate one. And actually what our young people who come into the care system as a result of abuse or neglect or harm at the hands of their own family, that's probably more damaging than travelling through the war zone, because these young people have that trauma of not being cared for by one that's supposed to love you most. And we're looking at that in comparison to our unaccompanied asylum seekers seems to have a greater impact on people's abilities to sustain education, employment and training.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, I think I'd like to back up what Annie's just said. You know, the case of our son, who we adopted when he was 7, well, he came to us at 7 and we adopted him when he was 8, and he'd been taken to care when he was 6. You know, him and the rest of his sibling group had suffered a tremendous amount of abuse and whatever, but we found with him, from the age of 7 through to about 13, 14, everything was fine. But I think as he hit the teenage years, he began to play out an awful lot of that stuff that had happened to him when he was younger, and he just disengaged from everything, including education. He subsequently, thanks to Bernardo's, actually then went to Rise Home and did a course there. He's now 27, working, got a partner and a family. He wasn't ready for between 16 and 18, he probably would have been a NEET, because he was, in effect. He just disengaged totally. He wasn't ready for that. He was still playing things out. But by the age of 21, 22, he was ready. So I think I think that just sort of backs up what Andy's saying about the importance of the Bernardo's service, extending it out to 25, because a lot of these young people are still playing this kind of stuff out. But ultimately, if you're then with a situation where they're in their late 20s, and if they are now all, hopefully, working, settled, whatever, I don't think it matters so much to me as measuring that target specifically between 16 and 18, if that makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I've just got one thought. When we get this report, it highlights the positives, it highlights the substandard ones, if you like. But I think there's an area that maybe we ought to just include in the report if we could, and that's where we've got a pass rate and it's starting to drop. I don't think we need to see it the first time it drops, but I would have thought it would be good to see something around reasons for a drop when it hits its second drop, and probably that's something we then could catch and do something about, and it would highlight it, I'm assuming, for whoever writes the report.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I can certainly take that back and discuss that with our performance colleagues that prepare the report, and that is something that we do on a kind of monthly basis. We get to see that and monitor that. So yeah, that's a really good point. I'll take that away. Thank you.
So thank you, Joe. Thank you, Andy. I move that we receive the report and accept this as an accurate overview of the service for the period concerned, Q3, and that we are satisfied with the assurances provided where targets have not been met. I also ask that our comments from the discussions as recorded are taken under consideration by officers and relevant portfolio holders. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Thank you. Then that is agreed. So we now move on to 8, which is the Fostering Service Q3 Performance Report. This item on pages 227 to 280 of the pack. The report provides an overview of the fostering service performance for Q3 of 2022-2023. This report will be presented by Deborah Crawford, Head of Service, Fostering, Adoption and Leaving Care. The panel is invited to review and comment on the contents of the report and accept the report as an accurate overview of the fostering service for Q3. Thank you, Deborah. Where are you there?
I'm over here.
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. This report, as outlined, is for the end period of last year, from October to December 2022. And I think the report accurately reflects the continued commitment of the fostering community to care for the increased numbers of children in care, which at that point hit the 759 quota. I think the report demonstrates the continued collaboration and efforts of those who, within and beyond the fostering service, strive to support and give children in care the best opportunities. I think our focus of this quarter was predominantly on the recruitment activity, the maintenance of support and supervision for fostering households, and a continued engagement by foster carers to access support both virtually and face-to-face. That is something that they like, and we have listened to what they've had to say. Without doubt, there have and continue to be challenges during this quarter in relation to the cost of living crisis, and within that quarter, the government indicated that they would be making an announcement of a 12.43% increase to all fostering minimum allowances. And what I would like to do, without stepping outside the parameters, Mr. Chairman, is just advise everyone this morning that I attended scrutiny with the council last Friday. Some of my colleagues were here, and albeit is yet to be ratified as a key decision, but Lincolnshire County Council Fostering Service are in a very proud position of being able to offer foster carers a 12.4% increase in allowances from the 1st of April. So that is a very, very good news story, and yet to be shared, but I just want to be clear that Councillor Mrs Bradwell is due to consider that decision on the 20th of March, but sorry, I've just digressed after that. Such good news. So I think the quarter highlights the manner in which we embraced the strong and sterling efforts of John Lewis Partnership when they brought their advert to life for their Christmas advertising, where they demonstrated and showed the impact of what ordinary people do for children who need extraordinary care. and we capitalised upon that as a part of our Christmas efforts. The fostering service staff engaged in the Santa run, and I'm very proud to say that we also donated to our local community food banks to support those that, you know, equally vulnerable adults living on the streets of Lincoln. I think it's fair to say that everything that our fostering families do is kind of celebrated where it can be. And one of the things that, again, brought their efforts and resilience and relentless commitment to life was when we were invited by Empower, who are the largest independent consultancy firm that work within the public sector, looking at change and transformation and better lives for citizens, invited one of our foster carers to accompany them to the National Children and Adult Services Conference up in Manchester in early November. And I'm very proud to say that he and I and a number of other people wasn't quite aware that he would be in the front of 1,000 delegates on a plenary session talking about hope and aspirations for children in care. I must say that he proudly presented the fostering kind of community of Lincolnshire, himself, the children that he's permanently committed to, and those leaving care in such an emphatic way, really. So much so that he was put forward for the Empower 2022 award that he proudly received on behalf of the community and was shared within the newsletter that was sent to every fostering household. So that for us was a really, really proud moment and testimony to all the people that selflessly kind of put themselves in the position of caring for our children. That effort for Manchester was also supported by supported lodgings providers, young people who are in care, young people who are in leaving care provision, who also did video clips so that they could be seen and shared across the nation. So I have to say Lincolnshire really did hit the mark there and did us very proud. I think I began to panic slightly when the foster carer said, one of the directors from a London borough actually said, "I've got one question for you, and that is, will you come and join us?" And I panicked because the answer was, you know, he was clearly wed to Lincolnshire and very proud to say it. But I just wanted to kind of share with you the impact that that had, not just for him, but for all of those people he represents so proudly within this local authority. I just go through in terms of kind of sharing with you some of the recruitment activity. Obviously, this is core part of our day-to-day business and is very much part of our service plan. And despite the national challenges, which are understood by government, have been recently mentioned in the Care Review, published in 2022, and the national charities such as Fostering Network and Fostering Plus basically, you know, explain that we are all fostering providers and all fostering agencies in the country are facing significant struggles and challenges. And, you know, what we've tried to do is be really creative here in Lincolnshire, listen to our community and actually enable those people that are interested in fostering accessing our support events and our interest evenings day and night. So we're kind of trying to capture those people in employment, those people not in employment, and personal preference. We recognise that retention is the most effective means of recruitment, and listening to feedback and reviewing and auditing our practices are crucial, really, in terms of managing those conversion rates from people expressing their interest through to being approved. The national data, which was released in the State of the Nation report undertaken by Fostering Network, highlights that we are in the region of 9,000 households short. There was mention on the news yesterday about the number of children in care at a kind of peak. So we have always been relatively ambitious in Lincolnshire in terms of our conversion rates from those people who pick up the phone, go onto the website and say, can you tell us a bit more about fostering, or what is it that I can do, or am I eligible, to the point of approval. Nationally, 6%. To date, today, we have a conversion rate of 11. And I'm hoping that by the end of March, subject to fostering panels and agency decision makers' decisions, that we probably will reach 14. So that is credit to the staff, our marketing resources, help from local businesses. You know, we are doing well, but there is no complacency and there is no standing still. So I'm really pleased about that, because what we do know that each year we do lose carers, and unfortunately and regrettably that can be down to ill health, down to retirement, life changes, and I think we are slowly recovering from the impact of COVID-19, but actually we never stand still. We understand why our people go, and you know that is really important, because we need to end the financial year with a plus and not a minus. So we've completed a survey to get some of that feedback back in and see how we can learn lessons and what we can do better. And I know that at previous corporate parenting panels, there's been requests around understanding our marketing strategy. I'm very pleased to say that we have 2 dedicated members of staff that work on our marketing strategy and are out there getting us kind of what they can do in terms of putting our name in the marketplace, because even though our boundary extends within and beyond Lincolnshire, so do the independent agencies. Nobody owns this territory, so we have to be sharp, compete and be on our toes all of the time. Within the report, I think it outlines what we've done in terms of marketing, where we get seen, the visibility and such like. So if you're behind any buses, or if you are in your local shops or whatever, sometimes you will see us, sometimes you will hear us on the radio. So, you know, please keep that ear and that eye open. I think one of the areas that we have made a concerted effort is around providing and strengthening our resource for permanence for children. And what I mean by that is providing children with longer term placements where they're best matched with carers who are able to meet their identified needs. And again, much of our business is behind the scenes in some respects, but people don't see how much effort and time and perseverance that it takes to invite people through the door, not only to foster, but to foster other people's children for longer term. It is a massive and huge commitment. And there are people that want to do that from the outset. There are other people that don't imagine doing it longer term, but actually end up in that position. So what I'm trying to say is that it takes all sorts, really. And I think we've had a number of really successful events where we've invited people going through the fostering assessment process, and those carers that are already approved to match with children by using their profiles, sharing a little bit of what they're about anonymously at the start, so that carers can express their interest and desire as to whether, you know, those children would fit in with their own existing families, because that is an important point. Birth children have a huge impact on how foster placements can either be successful or not. So all factors are taken into consideration. We always want to ensure there's no drift and delay for children in terms of their care plans. And again, our family finding, together with the permanence approach, strives to make sure that children are not, you know, experiencing further instability as a means of not being able to find placements. But I do have to say, it is really tough. It is really tough nationally. In my lifetime in fostering, some years ago, you'd probably have placement availability choice. Now we don't, in the independent market as well. So it is really, really difficult. I think, you know, we have to remember we're a regulated service. There are things that we must do and we have to do, and things that we want to do. And part of our core offer to all our households is the training and development, making sure that we adhere to the national minimum standards in fostering 2011. And, you know, we listen to carers' feedback, understand the gaps in their knowledge. There is mandatory training that goes on a 3-year cycle. And I'm really pleased to say that people have engaged with that and continue to do well with either the online or the limited face-to-face that we're doing. And there's no kind of challenges with getting people through their mandatory training. So that's a real positive. just to kind of go on and say that we have in the region of 310 fostering households. It's important to acknowledge that 55 of those approved households are what we call kinship carers, so carers who have been approved to care for specific children that they may be related to or have a relationship with. And they are so valuable because invariably for children, when we're undertaking all of our work, it's about exploring family networks and utilising those where we can, and it's safe to do so, to provide care for children with people who they're familiar with. And I think the Stable Homes Built on Love report, published in early 2023, February 23, means that the government are wanting to see stronger, efforts being made. And I'm proud to say that I think Lincolnshire are in a very strong position in our approach, that we always think about family first. Just to say that within the role of kinship, we also, do all the assessments for private fostering, the staying put agenda for those young people who reach 18 and remain in their foster placement, which is not technically foster placement, but the fostering household, is still very much alive and on our agenda. And I think, we have to kind of think about how we continue to build those homes to still be able to take children who are fostered, because even though we've got 46 young people in staying put arrangements, we have a solemn commitment to them to move them through. And given our responsibility for leaving carers until the age of 25, we want to support carers in their quest to see them through, as they have done their own children, but also be available to take younger children into their homes. I suppose just in summary, I would just say that it's been another very busy period, with demand for placements continuing. Placement availability within service and beyond is a real challenge. And, the numbers of children in care have actually dipped from when this report was written, I'm very pleased to say. But we have to go with the fluctuating need. We don't rest on our laurels. There's no time in fostering to stand still. The work that we do in kinship of 180 assessments sits on top of the support supervision and the moral duties that we have to our fostering workforce. So it's a very, very busy service that, obviously we try to, and continually try to develop, really. I suppose what I would just say, I think within the report, the accompanying appendices, which are kind of shows our, hopefully, jazzy and enticing fostering newsletters that go out to fostering households and are shared across the whole of children's services, kind of evidence really the community spirit that there is within the fostering community. And I think, our continued work across children's services is to support and respect those carers that are volunteers and that do it because they want to do it. So I think we remain heartened as a service by the interest of the Lincolnshire public, those in family networks, and the will of people to support, the care of children across our county, really. So I think, just to conclude, we're very privileged as a service across the whole of children's services, particularly fostering, to work with such a steadfast group of individuals who are resourceful, resilient. We're a strong fostering agency who want to support the children that we're responsible for, have the best kind of local experiences that they can in foster placements, with some of the most humble and selfless individuals that I'm proud to work with.
Thank you, Deborah. Councillor Haig, you wanted a question?
Thank you, Chairman. On the face of it, an encouraging report, which is always good to hear. Two questions, if I may. The 12% increase after from April onwards this year. Is that totally funded by central government, or is it county council, or is it a combination of the two? And the second question I've got, if I may, is out of the unsuccessful fosterings, is there a tendency for the foster parents to have issues or with the child, or is it the child with the foster parents, or is that about equal between the two parties? Thank you.
Okay, just to respond to your first point, the funding for the 12.4% with effect from the 1st of April of this year is part funded by government and part funded by Lincolnshire County Council. And as I said, it's kind of a good news story, really. To answer your second point, I'm not able to answer that as in a particularly clinical way. And often there are a number of factors that impact on why placements are not sustainable. And I think Andy Morris already alluded to this morning that even those children that have got to care leaver status, often these children have experienced such significant adverse experiences within their own family unit where they've experienced harm and trauma. And I think that the way that we try to match the right child with the right carer, using our assessment tools, understanding our carers, what they think they can manage. Sometimes you start out thinking this could be a little bit of a rocky road, and it surprises you. Because the support, the training, the support that foster carers get from each other, advice, a listening ear at times through the WhatsApp or Facebook or such like, those where you think it's ideally, where it appears suitably matched. Sometimes it's because children struggle in terms of attachment and such like. It's not always about foster carers giving in. If anything, it's the other way. But there are some behaviours and some issues that affect whether or not a placement is going to be sustainable. For example, obviously we have, children in care go to school, but sometimes it's to do with some of their behaviours or health issues or such like, where people who do come and step forward to foster are not always full-time foster carers. Some of them work. Anne, who's sat in front of me, is a classic example. And it depends that if you're a singleton carer, you think about who and how and what you can manage compared to those couple carers who actually probably have a little bit more resilience, a little bit more energy, a little bit more strength. So to be fair, Councillor Haig, it's a number of factors. But when that does happen, we, if we can see this heading that way, we do support meetings that include social workers and other agencies with the carers. We will look at what services we need to wrap around. So actually, we do everything to prevent a placement breakdown or disruption wherever we can. We don't just sit and wait for it to happen. And we unpick what those issues are. And actually, is there something that we can learn? Is there something that we can do differently? Or is it that actually, we start from the premise that most children can live within a family. And most of them can, but at times they can be a little topsy-turvy. And we have staff out there at evenings. And it's interesting how some foster carers will say, the role that you social workers and other staff do is really difficult. Actually, I take my hat off to them. It's 24/7, and I think with their own, all of our carers are committed to wanting to improve the lives of children like we do. So stickability, durability, they're the words that I would use. Even when things look really bleak, they stick in there. So it's a number of factors, if that helps explain. Thank you.
Just a point about the 12.43%, that has got to be ratified, but at Children's Services, children's executive. No, not even that one. Scrutiny the other day. Both myself and, more importantly, Councillor Mrs Bradwell, Executive Council for Children's Services, spoke very positively in favour of that. Anne, don't want to ambush you, but I'm going to. Did you want to comment or about the whole report in general? It'll be good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I was just thinking with that conversation about when placements break down. Obviously, a lot of the focus of the discussions here is on the children, young people, quite rightly. But I think when we're talking about placements breaking down or children moving on, that is a challenging time for carers as well. And actually, it has a huge impact on us. And personally, the only time I've ever considered not fostering anymore is when a placement has ended. Because of the impact it has for us, because it changes your family dynamic. Your family dynamic changes when you have a young person come in, and when they go, your whole family dynamic changes again. Whether they go for positive reasons or not, so it has a huge impact. And I think the support that we get from the fostering service can be really critical at that time, and from the fostering community. And we do pull together and we draw on the training opportunities that we have. I was on an online workshop last night, which was lovely. Obviously, I am an experienced carer, but there were some potential new carers on that course. So it was really nice to mix with them and to start to build those relationships, because they're people I will look out for in the future and offer support to. So we do get a lot of support, and that's really, and it's really positive to hear, you know, that is valued. Great to hear about the dentistry. Really excited about that, because that's a big issue for everybody. But yeah, for looked after children.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you. It's a great report and it's a good news story. Well done. Under marketing, so I've got 3 questions. First one, under marketing, it says there have been 7 newly approved households in this quarter in the financial year. This is the 3rd quarter. And 19 fostering households have been recruited since April 2022. So is that quarter 1, quarter 2 and quarter 3? So we've had 19 households recruited in quarter 1, quarter 2 and quarter 3. You talk about a 10% drop-off, and it's just that difference between shifting from hard numbers to percentages. So we've gained 19 placements, presumably single placements. I don't know, you can advise. So is it possible to know how many children have been placed and how many children's placements we have lost in numbers, not percentages, in that 3 quarters, please? That's question 1. Do you want to answer that?
More than happy to. Obviously, our data runs financial year, and we are on target schedule to complete the year with 32 new approvals. So what the way that we calculate that is that those 32 approvals, and if I stick with that on the basis that they've got to get through panel and an agency decision maker decision, that is about approval of households. Now, the fostering regulations are such that legally it's 3 children in placement unless they're a sibling group. Now, not every fostering household who turn up to say, we would like to do this, feel that they're able to take a maximum of 3 children or 5 children. Some people only want to care for 1 or 2 if siblings. So in terms of the number of beds, I haven't got that on me, Councillor Matthews. More than happy to provide that, but I'd have to go through the approvals so that I could check that. In terms of the second part to your first question, our conversion rate is 11% currently, and that is the number of people that go onto the website or complete an inquiry form and then get through panel. So whilst that seems a relatively low conversion rate, nationally it's 6%, and there are a number of reasons why people will inquire and then not proceed with a registration of interest, which is when we start kind of getting into recording, writing things down about their intent to foster. We have no... When we look at the number of fostering households that we're losing, again, not all fostering households would accommodate 3 children. So in terms of beds lost, I would need to go and kind of weigh and unpick that. What we do as part of our exit interview is understand why people are leaving. And what I have to acknowledge is that the demographic of our carers are that they're older. People want to do something different. They want to retire. They will see those children through but take no new placements. But, you know, and it's, for some of them, it's, you know, it's a long-standing relationship and union they've had with the council. So it's a massive deal to them and it's a massive deal to us. I think what I am able to satisfy you with is that our kind of the rate of loss, if you like, is that they're not going off to foster for other agencies. This is about a natural ending to their career, almost really. So we are likely at the end of this year to be in a position where we've got 6 extra households to our quota. And that might seem a small number for a huge amount of work, but actually we have to stick at it.
Thank you. And that was the nub of my question. That 11% conversion rate, is that the 19? That's what. So it's that shift between percentages and numbers that I was. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we have, there's 2 stages to the fostering application process. So stage 1 and stage 2, and it's only once you've gone through those stages, which is about all the statutory checks, references and such like, and then the assessment. Now, the people that tend to commence their kind of assessment period are the people that we get through to panel and do get approved. It is unusual that at any point in the stage 2 process that you get people who withdraw, because the initial kind of contacts that we have with people, those conversations and the materials, exposure to other foster carers and such like, during that early part of the assessment process tends to wheedle those people out. So the people that progress are your hardened people that are in this and definitely want to foster, because it's an arduous process. I think Anne's probably nodding, and not because we make it that way, but it is a massive assessment that has to be undertaken. We need to be confident that we've got the right people caring for our children. So
I'm happy with that. It was just that anomaly between hard numbers and percentages that I couldn't true. Question 2. In this third quarter, 97 became children in care. That's quoted in there. And 57 went into foster placement or a foster home. What happened to the others?
That could be that they are in residential or a kinship arrangement, or they are in some other form of provision. So it depends on when we get our data and when we look at it, we can tell our age cohorts, those that have come in, where they've gone. So foster care is one option for children in care. And obviously, as I've said earlier on, we're a kind of fostering first authority, really. So we always look at, once we've established that family are unable to care for these children, that fostering, that, you know, foster placements are an option. But it's not, they could be in alternative provision, such as residential, as I said, placed with family. So, you know, that's how we work our breakdown.
Could some of them be in prison?
Very few. There are, but very few.
Sorry, that just struck me. That could we report it on that?
Yeah, the figures, remember, we've got 12 young people in custody, and the majority of those are 16 and 17 years old, or over the age of 18. So it's very, very small numbers, very small.
So in those quarterly statistics, it's going to be a small proportion of that. Yeah, no, that's fine. I would be genuinely interested to see that breakdown of children coming in and the placements they're put into. Not necessarily every time you present the quarterly, but just intriguing to know the children coming in and where they're being put. Because my third and final question, and you may not be the appropriate person to answer this, we've heard about the shocking, horrendous backstory for many of these children coming into care. And I wonder if, because of that and because of their inability to almost function the way we're hearing, they can't engage in education, they're problematic with their foster care, with some of their foster carers, that it's a battle. If there might be a different placement or a better placement or a different way we could look at those traumatized children. So it's a subjective question. Is the offer we're making the right one? Should we be making, bearing in mind the nature of that change of client, should we be trying to get a different arrow in our quiver?
I think what I would say by means of reply is that the majority of children, we've got 69% of our children in care community within foster placements, and a vast majority of those children will remain in foster placements. We are guided by kind of feedback from foster carer, our ongoing assessment by the children's social workers, virtual school, health and other agencies in terms of kind of identifying the right support for those children, and the support for carers in terms of managing those behaviours. What I would say, and it is a very general comment, is that most of our children will do well in foster care. And so much so that we have had since 2011, when we were one of the pilot authorities, we have a large number of young people who remaining staying put arrangements because of that very reason, because they've had the second opportunity of family life and have done well. There are always going to be some young people, some children and young people who require specialist support, which is perhaps above and beyond. But we don't start from that premise. We start from actually using our assessment tools, including the Value in Care Toolkit, using our assessments to actually understand what this child's journey and lived experience has been and how we can best match and meet their needs. So it's every entrant that comes into foster care or care is carefully considered, so that we can get the right placement for these children and do our best. And I think some of the material and some of the documentation we've heard today and earlier corporate parenting panels is that we've got some exceptional young people that do really well and have had a life in care. So I wouldn't, I think we always recognise there are some children who are going to have been more traumatised. There are always going to be other children that are a little more resilient than others, depending on their experiences. But as a collective group of people, a team around the child, we tend to know which children we need to place where and when.
Joe, did you want to come in?
Only really just to echo what Deborah said. I think we are the envy of many other local authorities in the fact that, as Deborah said, 69% of our children are in foster care, which is absolutely amazing. And, we want to wrap as much support around our foster carers as we possibly can. And you've heard about how we do that. And hearing from Anne is really helpful, who's confirming that approach, really. But I guess, as Deborah said, we have a range of other options because we consider all children and their needs individually. And that's why we've had the programme around, creating the new children's homes in different parts of the county. Our commitment is very much to try and keep children in Lincolnshire and keep them close, so that they can access the services that we provide and the schools and education that's available to them. But that's not always possible, but that is really for a relatively small number of children, unlike some local authorities who are in the opposite position where they place the majority of children outside.
May I? Thank you ever so much. And, you know, it's absolutely joyful hearing all this good news stuff. I'm harking back to that 53% that are not in employment, education, training. And I'm just intrigued to know how many of those are outside the foster care system, if you like. It's granular micro-analysis of data, but in other words, we're hearing great stuff about our foster care, and that's genuine. It is great stuff. Should we be increasing our drive to go through foster care if the results of being fostered show that you do engage with society, not better, but earlier, perhaps, as a continual flow, rather than, as Andy was saying, that you have a gap where you struggle from 14 to 27 and then you come back in at 27?
Yeah, I'd just say out the statistic we're looking at, those young people have left care, so they're outside of the fostering system. I would say that the majority of young people that stay put and stay with their foster carers do better than some of those young people that don't stay put with their foster carers. We know that, absolutely, that really works. And this is why when they're looking at improvements outcomes for care leavers, the government drive to extend staying put beyond the age of 21 up to the age of 24 is saying these are not the young people that, you know, struggle. These are the young people that stay connected to those foster families, whether they leave the foster family or not. You know, they stay close and connected, and they build those enduring relationships. I would say a lot of the young people that struggle more, those that come into care later, 16, 17-year-olds that come into care. I talked about that growing number of 16, 17-year-olds. That's a national picture. Some of those young people don't themselves say to us, you know, when we're looking at whether we place or look to get a young person fostered, it's not just our assessment, it's the wishes and feelings of the young person as well. And a lot of 16, 17-year-olds say, I don't want to live with a family. And, you know, so we do have semi-independent living supported options. We talked about Rowston and Denton, our semi-independent living accommodation options. We've got all sorts of solo placements where young people with higher needs have intense supported staffing around them. We've got a range of really good models that do well. I think probably one of the best things to help you understand some of that will be probably to go do some shadowing someday as well, to go and see some of these provisions and meet some of the staff and young people and have that conversation with them. But yeah, we do have a whole range, but I would say the 16, 17-year-old cohort coming into care later is a different challenge and present different needs.
Councillor Whittington.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just one comment on the increase in the foster allowances, as been mentioned. It's part funded by government grant, part funded by ourselves. But I'm delighted. But when the budgets were setting, and obviously I'm Councillor Hill, support Councillor for Finance, happy to confirm that 12.4 increase was in all of the financial plans that were presented to Council and agreed. So hopefully the sign-off by Councillor Bradwell should just be a formality in terms of finance. Regarding the conversion rates, yeah, I mean, I'm really pleased to see that the conversion rate is as high as it is and is actually improving. And as somebody who's been through the process, it is a very, very odd, it's an arduous process, but it has to be an arduous process. You know, it can't be something really, you know, and I certainly know when we were going through the process, there's assessments, home visits, and actually unfortunately when the assessors came to our house, when we were looking to adopt, unfortunately we were midway through having our kitchen done, which of course immediately causes them a problem because they have to tick off facilities. So we had to have a second assessment, which is fair enough, because they wanted to come back to make sure that, you know, but that is sort of kind of the level of the detail they do, because they have to make sure that the houses the children are going to go into, you know, have got the proper facilities and everything like that, because quite often a lot of these young people come from family homes that haven't got these facilities or they're lacking in some way. So it is a really rigorous process. Training courses, and yes, it is very, very, very rigorous, and it is a very, very tough thing to do. And you know, there were occasions during our time when our son was living with us, when very, very challenging behaviour, you know, and you almost think, you know, is this relationship breaking down? And it did play out during those teenage years. And it is a very, 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 very difficult time. But we managed to, we kind of got through it, and actually our relationships, I think now with our son, are really strong. There's things I could say that are quite emotional about it. But when he's 19 and he's studying our kitchen at home, saying that if it wasn't for us taking him, he didn't think he'd be alive at 19. That's quite an emotion. That's quite a thing for him to share, of course, obviously. So yeah, it's a very, very can be a bit of a roller coaster at times, but a bit of a hairy ride. But I think if you stick in there, the results are worth it.
Thank you, Mark. Any further questions? Okay, that is great. Deborah, fantastic news. I know that you're not going to let off. You're going to keep going. It's a super report. I appreciate the extra marketing stuff. I know it's me that nags about marketing, but that's been most of my my working life. It's good to see. As you know, I was at Manchester, and the presentation by our team and by our foster carer was the highlight. And it wasn't just because I was from Lincolnshire. It got the best reception of everything that I sat in. The response from the carer about London was even better, because actually what he said was, I've just moved from London and there's no way that I could have done what I've just done in a London borough. It really was good. That the whole event was first class. So yeah, that thank you. So the proposal is that I move that we receive the report and are satisfied with the performance achieved by the service area and assurance provided around areas that require attention and improvement. I also ask that our comments from the discussions as recorded are taken under consideration by relevant officers and portfolio holders. Let the record also reflect our thanks to our fostering families who, despite the impact of the issues still experienced by the legacy of the pandemic, anyway, that'll do. In conjunction with the global cost of living crisis and other concurrent events, are still standing strong and continue providing warm, welcoming and stable nutrient environments for our children. I wish to thank all our fostering parents. What a fantastic job they do. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Thank you. That is agreed. Thank you once again, Deborah. So we move on to item 9, criminal activity, outcomes and pathways for children in care. This report can be found on pages 281 to 286 of the agenda pack and provides an overview of the approach to reducing youth crime in Lincolnshire through restorative approaches and reflects the additional safeguards employed to avoid the unnecessary criminalisation of children in care. Before we move on to the consideration of this report, I would like to clarify a point around the order of the report's contents. Specifically, on page 282, the subsection 3 conclusion has been inserted at that point by mistake. This subsection begins on page 285 and includes the last paragraph. Subsequently, the following subsections numbering should have increased by 1 value. The report will be presented by Andy Cook, Head of Service, Futures for Me and Youth Offending. The panel is invited to consider and comment on the detailed information contained in the report and recommend any actions or changes to the executive portfolio holder and leading officers. Andy, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity to come today to obviously be able to represent this this really important and critical work. What I've sought to do within the report is obviously give highlight the journey that we've been on within Lincolnshire about our approach to tackling youth crime and the reduction in tackling youth crime. But I guess with a very specific focus also on looking at those additional safeguards that we've also employed around those pathways to ensure that children in care are not overrepresented within the youth justice system, and that obviously that we've got pathways and protocols that ensure those protections and safeguards, if you like. And there's a huge amount of work that's gone on over probably the last 4 or 5 years that I think reflects that work. One of the first things I suppose I wanted to talk about, because I've highlighted Win in the background about us being a child-first organisation, and that's really key in moving towards that and recognising children as children within the youth justice system and responding appropriately to that and proportionately to that as well. And I think one of the things that I probably want to firstly talk about is the positive collaboration that exists with Lincolnshire Police, because if you think about crime and offences and so forth, that is the first point of contact. And I think without that collaboration with Lincolnshire Police and them also being signed up and committed to being a child-first organisation and recognising the vulnerabilities of children, you could never really, sustain that approach. So I think it's really important that we give that recognition to Lincolnshire Police and the collaboration. And there's a number of areas of work in which we've done that. But I think that also extends into the court system as well. It looks at our relationships with the Magistrates Court, the Youth Court, youth magistrates, and also the Crown Prosecution Service, where they have key decisions to make in respect of the disposals and the outcomes for children and young people. So I think what we wanted to say was that obviously there's national data about the overrepresentation of children in care within the youth justice system, which I think's prompted lots of work to try and address that and look at the reasons and the rationale behind that. And huge amounts of work's been done in relation to that. And I think one of the things that's underpinned that, and it's been in place, although we have recently updated it and I guess tried to give it a more refined focus, is the Children's Safeguarding Protocol about trying to reduce the criminalisation of children in care. And what that's about is really considering at every juncture whereby those decisions and disposals can be made is the recognition of children in care and their additional vulnerabilities, and how without those safeguards there's potential for them again to be brought into the formal criminal justice system. So it's really important to say, and I think highlighting this, is that Lincolnshire Police have done a lot of work in terms of the reduction in terms of arrests and bringing children into custody. That's clearly a huge positive. But what we've also seen, which has been a huge strength, I think, of our work in Lincolnshire, is far more drive towards restorative outcomes and ensuring that we're not unnecessarily criminalising children, that we can deal with them at a right and appropriate level, and that those, if you like, what we would call those out-of-court disposals, so dealing with children before they've reached the formal criminal justice system, is the way to do that. And when we do that, and we do that in that restorative way, what we're also seeing is the reoffending rates associated with that cohort of children are also much more positive than when children are drawn into the formalised system. So there's lots and many reasons as to why we'd want to take that approach, but that's clearly a huge one. And it's also about looking at those longer term implications as to if you acquire a criminal record, about that, what means for you when you reach adulthood, professions that you might want to go into, and how that might stifle and hamper your career opportunities and future outcomes. So just thinking really strongly in relation to that as well. So I've highlighted, obviously, the formalised youth justice system, which, again, we work within a context of 10 to 18 years of age within that formal system, the age of criminal responsibility. Our oversight body is the Youth Justice Board, so they provide our funding along with the Police and Crime Commissioner and the County Council. We've got a robust inspection framework, which is His Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation, and I guess at a more localised level, the oversight of the work that we've done is overseen by the Strategic Management Board, which you, Councillor Rowe, are a member of. But I think what's also pertinent and right to say at this juncture is that Andy's joined that board as a board member, and I think that's really key, and I think has been recognised as really good practice to ensure that the voices of children in care are absolutely represented within that forum. And to the extent that at a recent board development session, there's a dedicated priority towards children in care that now stands as one of the board's priorities. So I think all of those things together really highlight that strength, if you like, in terms of that commitment towards doing that. I think, as I said, the protocol that's signed off at a multi-agency level, including senior officers within County Council and the police and health, and the Safeguarding Partnership, highlights the overarching partnership commitment to wanting to ensure that children in care are not unnecessarily criminalised. So that starts as the underpinning quality. I guess what extends from that is the points at which we then meet children and young people, and then how we respond, because that's clearly the key feature, because without that, it's a protocol in isolation, and what it needs to or we need to be seeing happening, is that actually it equates to practice, and that then we see those things in practice. So I've highlighted just, I guess, some key things which I think are real strengths that we've got in Lincolnshire. So where children do potentially arrive at police custody, the Criminal Justice Liaison and Diversion service is available to those children and young people, so a pathway for intervention, for assessment and screening at the really earliest point, and also those practitioners having a knowledge and awareness of who those children, if they have got a dedicated social worker or a worker, as a point of contact to be able to liaise with them. But what we've also spoken about and invested really strongly in, because we believe it was right and appropriate to do so, is training for police officers, police custody sergeants, to ensure that the cultural element of dealing with children and young people is also bought into by them. So as I said, we've really worked hard in terms of dealing with police to get them on the same train of thought as us, and thinking about these children's backgrounds, their experiences, trauma-informed practice, thinking about all those different life experiences and how they may be influencing behaviour, just to ensure that all those factors are given right and appropriate consideration before sort of formal decisions are taken. I think what we'd also say is that obviously those are things at the first point of entry into police custody. What we've then done, and I think obviously been highlighted, and we've spoken about it on many occasions in relation to scrutiny, in terms of children's scrutiny, is about the work of the diversionary panel. And I think the diversionary panel, since its establishment in 2017, has radically changed and altered the way and approach that we deal with children and young people, because we are dealing with it in a restorative way. And to the extent that our work sort of balance now is weighted towards 65% of dealing with children out of the formalised youth justice system in an out of court way, and 35% flowing through the youth justice system. So if we were having this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, you could have flipped those numbers on their head. So that's how dramatic a shift we've seen in time. But what's much more important about that, yes, it does reduce first-time entrance into the system. What's more important about that, it's offering really timely and holistic support and intervention to children at the right level, at the right time, and with all the necessarily specialist supports that would be available to them through that process. So, and again, couldn't happen if we didn't have the buy-in of all those key agencies, and particularly the police, because it's a joint diversionary process, and police have to be absolutely bought into that and the integrity of it. And obviously we've been through many a discussion in terms of evaluation and robustness of that process, observation, people being able to see the integrity of it, just to ensure that it is doing what we would want it to be doing, and testing that process all along, and constantly seeking to develop and shape it as well, which has been a process throughout. So what I would also say is, obviously 2018, the development of Future for Me as a service, which obviously brought together, yes, the youth offending service, which was one element of that, but also the aspects of early help, positive futures, youth and community development, our support to those 16 and 17-year-olds at risk of homelessness, and also that dedicated focus around tackling those children who are going missing and exploitation. So again, bringing a sort of holistic oversight to those children, recognising their needs, and obviously having appropriate services and provision available to support them as well. And again, that's been, as I said, since 2018, a continual process of evolving, developing, and embedding those processes, but to the point now where they're very well understood, they're very well addressed within the organisation, and I think work well within the localities in collaboration with our colleagues across many different teams, and offering that consultative model. And I think what I was also going to highlight there was that the commitment around that's been really enhanced and boosted by the money. So more than £2.5 million we've received as a service to provide trauma-informed care through the Framework for Integrated Care, which has enabled us to recruit to a whole host of specialist roles around clinical psychology, forensic psychology, speech and language therapy. And all those roles are critical, because what they do is they get to the heart of some of the experiences of children and young people, and give the support and confidence to practitioners to work in a trauma-informed way, which enables them to, I think, obviously really commit to getting to understand the child's behaviour, and as I said, addressing that, and not just looking at the offence in isolation, which is just one element of that child's story. And as I said, really significant success in terms of that, and that support does extend out in a hub and spoke model, but lots of other teams within the wider Children's Services Directorate are benefiting from that support as well, and it absolutely aligns with the thread of us being a trauma-informed organisation and wanting to support children in that way. So I think, as I said, there are a number of ways. I think I've also highlighted within there is about the very small numbers, which I think Andy alluded to earlier about children in custody, which is, again, a positive within Lincolnshire. It reflects the fact that legislation some time ago changed that when children were remanded into youth detention accommodation or into the care of the local authority, they became children in care. That's something, obviously, we monitor and have oversight over. But as I said, those are very small numbers, and it is representative of those, I guess, being at the real higher end of the continuum in terms of the most serious offences where those decisions are made, because far fewer children now do go to custody, and that's right and appropriate. And where we can find community options, robust community options, that's what we should be seeking to do. So avoiding children being unnecessarily remanded, and then, as I said, avoiding where possible and where it's right and appropriate to do so, those children ending in youth custody, because we also spoke about the significant impact of children going into custody. But as I said, historically, and it's a really positive story, I think within Lincolnshire those numbers have been very low, and we would want to sustain that. But I think you also do that with positive relationships with the courts, in terms of being able to offer non-custodial alternatives, and the courts having the willingness and the confidence to support that, and seeing that those children can be supported effectively and appropriately within the community. So really, I guess in summary and conclusion, what we were saying is that I think within all the various pathways and how we've worked and continued to work, there's been a really significant shift in terms of the recognition of wanting to support children, take restorative actions, but keeping, and as I said, through those various different mechanisms, and we've discussed about children in care being absolutely recognised and highlighted, and the additional vulnerabilities that they may have, which may, if not addressed, increase the potential of them coming into the criminal justice system. So it's about us being mindful of that. It's about applying those safeguards and then ensuring that we work in that really restorative way and offering support and intervention in the most timely and appropriate sense to avoid that unnecessary criminalisation of children in care, and all children across the board.
Thank you. What's the position with regard to the HMIP inspection? Is that a formal announcement? Did you want to just... I think 1 minute about that might be good.
I think it's already been announced anyway at scrutiny last week, so I'll let Andy make that announcement again.
Yes, so we've got a report that's at the management board next week, and is embargoed in terms of its release. But just in terms of the overarching inspection results, so we received an outstanding judgment, so the highest possible judgment. So we're really proud, we're really thrilled in relation to that, and it was an incredibly robust inspection over a significant period of time, 8 inspectors. With a huge focus, but also really proud of the partnership commitment to that as well, and the work of the management board, which have all been highlighted within the report. So a huge amount of strengths. And what I'd also say is that it gave a specific outstanding judgment to the joint diversionary panel in terms of the work that it's doing in terms of recognising that as well. So and the inspectors did also reflect and highlight as really good practice the representation of Andy as being a voice for children in care within the management board. So yeah, we're really thrilled and delighted. And obviously, I think it's published formally on the 3rd of April with a press release, and yeah, we'll going from there. But thank you for that.
Okay, yeah. I must say that the inspection was one of the most worrying things that I've done as a councillor, but actually went extremely well, and it's something I'm quite proud to have been involved in. And congratulations to all the team. So, do I have any questions, Councillor Whittington?
Question, but more, I guess, more of an observation. It's really great to see all the work that's going on, especially with the joint diversionary panel. To avoid giving children, young people a criminal record. But of course, if you sort of read the report, you see that in the UK, well, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, the age of criminal responsibility is 10, which is really quite low. Scotland, it's 12. It's a common law thing, the age of criminal responsibility. But if you look across Europe, for instance, I think we're about the lowest in Europe, certainly in Western and Northern Europe. I mean, Spain, Germany, it's 14, France is 13, Holland, Belgium 12, Japan 14, even Russia is 14, and North Korea is 14. So our age of criminal responsibility really is very, very low in comparison to a lot of other countries. The only country, there are a number of countries in the Middle East, parts of Africa that are low at sort of 7 and 8, and in the United States of America, 28 states don't have a minimum age. So in theory, any child from any age could be. So I think part of it for me, and this is something because I studied my first degree was in law many years ago. And we looked at this age of criminal responsibility, and it is extremely low in England, Wales, Northern Ireland in comparison with the rest of the world. And for me, there's always been a danger there. That in this country, we almost have in the past criminalised some of our people of far too early an age in comparison to some other countries across the world. So I'm really pleased to see that the work that we're doing here seems to be kind of addressing that issue. Now, obviously, I don't think we're going to raise the minimum age of criminal responsibility. But I think, for me, it's really important that we are actually doing all this work to kind of, my own personal opinion is 12, is the 10 is far too young. But I'm really pleased to see that the work we're doing is kind of trying to address a lot of this. So it's not really a question, but it's more of a general sort of comment. So many congratulations on all the work you're trying to do to avoid giving young people a criminal record at too young an age. And of course, especially children in care who, as we've constantly hear, have suffered so many problems in their young lives that, for them, behaviour that might be deemed criminal could just be at 10 or 11 if they kick out or something, whatever, could just be, in theory, a criminal offence, but it's a reaction to a lot of the abuse they suffered when they were younger. So many congratulations. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes.
Thank you, Chairman. On the bottom of page 284, it says between February 2022 and January of this year, there were 9 young people sentenced or remanded in care. Out of those, were they all Lincolnshire, or are there some of that number from out of county? Thank you.
For the purposes of the report, Councillor, I've included those are purely Lincolnshire children because the responsibility for children who are placed here remains, and particularly when they're sent to custody, that their home area is retained and responsibility around that is retained. So I think just in terms of that breakdown, 6 of them remanded into custody. So as I said, remand into custody does bring it with it that child in care status for the period of time, but then that can be for quite a short duration, and it can then be potentially ended when the remand period ends, because at the end of the remand period it doesn't necessarily mean that the child will be sentenced to custody. It's perhaps just that at the outset the seriousness of the matters was first considered to merit being remanded, and then at subsequent hearings the child or young person can be released and then potentially community. So on other occasions it can result in a custodial sentence, but it's obviously determined by the seriousness of the matters. But as I said, for the purposes of those numbers, that is Lincolnshire children, yeah.
Do we have any further questions? Okay. The comment you were just saying about was it the 11? They might not have been children in care in the first place. So originally what I got in my head, they were some of our cared for children that were having problems with the law. That's not necessarily the case. They became cared for children because of, rather than in the first place. Yeah, that is great. Thank you very much for that report. I move that we receive and endorse the report and express our satisfaction in relation to the range of actions and activities designed and implemented to safeguard our children in care and divert them from entering the formal criminal justice system where appropriate, or act in a restorative manner where young people find themselves in that situation. I also ask that our comments and suggestions are captured and shared with relevant officers in support of their efforts. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement, please? Thank you very much. Then that is agreed, and thank you very much once again, Andy. Item 10, Corporate Parenting Panel Work Programme. This item on pages 287 to 290 of the agenda pack enables the panel to comment on the contents of his own work programme. The report will be presented by Chiara, Scrutiny Officer. The Corporate Parenting Panel is asked to agree the work programme and identify any items for future meetings. Over to you, Chiara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chiara Cazzion, designated scrutiny officer for this panel. The work programme, as we all know, is a living document that is moulded and developed by members of this committee and officers. And the work programme aims at ensuring that scrutiny activity is focused where it can be of greatest benefit. So members are encouraged to highlight items that could be included for consideration in future meetings. In our next meeting, which is going to take place on the 11th of May, the agenda, as this has currently been developed and up to date, contains two reports, one on the Regulation 44 Independent Visiting Service Annual Report for 2022-2023, and a report on the Independent Reviewing Service, which is also an annual report for 2022 and 2023. This concludes my update to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? No. Okay. So thank you. This concludes the discussions. I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme as detailed in 287 to 290 of the agenda pack. Can I ask you to raise your hands if you're in agreement? Thank you. That is agreed. So this concludes the business. Thank you everybody for your attendance. Just a quick word of warning: there's white stuff falling out of the sky. It could be a bit challenging when we get out there. So. Hope you all get home safely, and thank you very much for all your contributions. Thank you.